Hello and welcome. It is Saturday. It is the 6th day of February 2021. I am your grumpy guide to all things gaming, the Valentine Scrooge, the OG GM, and it's time to talk about games I love, or at least have experienced, and, usually don't have physical copies of, but I'll still talk about them. So, Guillermo Robles, I believe that is how I pronounce his name, contacted me in response to a post I made about, of all things, Teeny Supers, and wanted to talk about Dragonlance and the Dragonlance modules and my experience with Dragonlance when it, originally hit the scenes in the mid-late 80s, and my experience playing through the modules, my experience running the modules, my experience with the Dragonlance phenomena. Dragonlance was huge in the gaming geek community. It was as huge as EverQuest Warcraft, and probably almost as it was the Critical Role of its time. It was as huge then as Critical Role is now. Now, obviously, number-wise, Critical Role now is probably bigger than Dragonlance, but Dragonlance, just the amount of fan base, just the amount of people coming to the game because of the Dragonlance books, and just being introduced to the hobby through Dragonlance was huge when it, first came out. So I would say it has the same ripple effect as EverQuest and Warcraft did, and Magic did, and of course now Critical Role does, of just introducing this hobby, this gaming, Dungeons & Dragons, the world of Dragonlance to people who normally wouldn't be interested in it, and then bringing them to the game and wanting to be a part of it because they wanted to, explore the world of the Dragonlance, be Tasselhoff, be Raceland, encounter Tiamat, stuff like that. So Dragonlance was huge. So let's talk about, personally, first, my experience with Dragonlance, the role-playing game. I never ran Dragonlance. I was in a short-lived Dragonlance campaign. It was a good group of people. It was 1984, 1985. The DM was decent, kind of silly. Obviously, the modules tend to follow the books exactly and recommend you play the characters from the books. So there's very little rules in the original Dragonlance modules for making your own character. You had to play Celeborn or Raceland or Tasselhoff or Thwin, or I don't remember the other names. Just the characters from the books were the pre-generated characters, and you had to play through the modules as if they were scripted like the books, which meant they were very linear, very railroady. There was very little option to diverge from the written script. Now, a good DM can run with that, obviously, and just say, well, fuck it, player characters are doing shit that isn't covered, and a bad DM will just sort of block your attempts to go off the track. Now, in this case, the DM that was running the Dragonlance modules campaign that I was through, we were all playing Dragonlance characters. I got stuck with Raceland, probably because I was a whiny, groany, grim, dark individual at the time anyways, and Raceland's kind of cool. And I'd read the books, so I was kind of familiar with Raceland as a character and his eventual, fate, and stuff like that. And it was like, yeah, oh, great, I get to see everybody as they're already dead. Unfortunately, the person playing Tasselhoff was extremely annoying. Took the Tasselhoff personality of, oh, you dropped this and I found it, and just pushed it to the extreme, to the point where they were just grating on everybody's nerves. And I was at the point where I was like, okay, if you do that one more time, I'm going to fry you and make myself a pair of Kender skin boots. But of course, the game wouldn't let you. So we could get as mad as we want, and I could get as angry as I want, and I could threaten Tasselhoff's players many times as I want. But there's no rules for that in the Dragonlance modules, and the DM was not going to diverge from the path. He was very committed to the linear thing. Until towards the end of the game. Then it got just ridiculous with what he was letting Tasselhoff's players get away with, and just what we were doing. We were just like, okay, now you've just completely gone from being very linear to what the fuck? We were in, I guess, a dungeon, and he said, "Oh, you're in room 12," and the Tasselhoff player says, "Oh, how do we know we're in room 12?" And the DM says, "Oh, the number's on the floor." I don't know if he was trying to be silly or if he wasn't paying attention, but, he said, so there's a 12 on the floor. And so Tasselhoff player says, "Okay, I pick up the 2 from the 12 and I put it down in front of the 1, and now we're in room 21. What do we see?" And first, that's impossible. Second, what? And third, he ran with it. So he went from being extremely linear, extremely by the book, extremely railroady, to completely mind-bonding, WandaVision, webbly wobbly. Suddenly we're in room 21. Now, I get the feeling the person playing Tasselhoff had also read the adventure because they knew exactly what was in 21. So suddenly we're in the main fight because room 21 was like the big fight. Suddenly we're surrounded, and I'm just like, there was no way to do it. So obviously my personal experience is kind of shaded. That says if you're looking for an old school introductory, very simple, railroady adventure that explores the world of Krynn and Dragonlance and introduces the things like the Minotaurs and the Kender and the Gully Dwarves, and you just sort of want a quick premiere of the world of Dragonlance, this is the modules, if you can find them, are good, and they're constantly repeated, and they're constantly given gold edition, and I'm sure they will be re-released again along with the books with the forthcoming new Dragonlance stuff coming from Wizards of the Coast. That said, it is a very much 1980s mindset series of adventures and series of books with how fantasy was perceived both by players and creators. It's very post-Tolkien, very post-Conan, very Saturday morning cartoon, very much, all the things people complain about in Dungeons & Dragons are very prominent in the Dragonlance world book, Dragonlance modules for D&D. Dragonlance books are not, Tchaikovsky or Dante or, Gone with the Wind or Moby Dick. Or, they are very much easy to read, easy to approach, bodice ripper, standard fantasy of the time. Why did they catch on the way they did as opposed to, say, other novels that came out the same time? Who knows? Just right place, right time, hit the needle on the head. Maybe because it just somehow appealed to people who wouldn't normally get to be introduced to the genre. Maybe it was just because where you could, these were fantasy books you could find in the supermarket at the time and in a Barnes & Noble at the time. They were a New York bestseller. They're very easily approachable characters, a very easy, approachable world. It wasn't super complicated like Lord of the Rings, although it uses all the typical fantasy tropes and all the prejudices and all the things we complain about today. Very prevalent in the Dragonlance novels, but they're very simple read, very simple bodice rippers, nothing, no moral quandaries, no moral dilemmas, no Game of Thrones politics. You know who the good guys are, you know who the bad guys are, you pretty much know how things are going to get resolved. Of course, the final thing with, Kellenvor and Raistlin was sort of a surprise, and, Raistlin's eventual fate. But at the beginning, yeah, it was a simple trilogy, easy to read. I mean, each one was like 300 pages, but you could get through it in like a day or two. So I can see, beach read fantasy, approachable, appealed to a wide variety. A lot of people identified with the characters. It didn't make you unhappy. It was just, this is a simple, easy, fun fantasy book. I'm really interested in this world, and now I see people are playing through the world with this wibbly wobbly, weird D&D game. Maybe I want to check it out. So I think that maybe explains why it was so popular and just so fast and had that same just, oh, wow, I want to play Dragonlance and I want my experience at the game table to be exactly like the Dragonlance books and exactly like the Dragonlance animation, exactly like the Dragonlance video game. Just I want that experience. I'm hooked. I'm into it. I heard about this game. Yeah. Now it's the same thing with Critical Role, and who knows what the next thing will be. Support me, Dr. Pepper. I need a sponsor, and I will sell out. So there's my personal experience with the Dragonlance modules, playing through them, running them. I never ran them. I didn't own the books. The extra character races were interesting. Minotaurs, Kenders were ridiculous, and everybody just sort of played them as super thieves that could get away with anything, which was just sort of, I don't understand. The characters in the books are easy, approachable, fun, simple. The modules are very linear, very railroady, but that said, they're very fun, they're very simple, they're very approachable. They're very easy to run, very easy to play through. They could all just be played as like one night drop-in one-shots with very little work. They stand the test of time. You can still run the Dragonlance stuff today, and with very little, tweaking, people would either be very much like, this is great, this is a drop of nostalgia, or because it is so much 80s mentality and all the things we now say, well, this was, D&D was bad in the 80s, and the message it gave was bad in the 80s, and it did this and this and this in the 80s. Well, that's there. It's very much there. It is very much a late 80s, early 90s franchise, and everything good about fantasy in that time and everything bad about fantasy in that time are definitely in the novels and in the modules. So there we go. That is this week's games I love, or at least played and have an opinion about. If you had a good time with and good memories of the Dragonlance adventures and the world of Krynn and stuff like that, let me know down below. If you had a bad time and think Raceland got the short end of the stick, comment down below. If you haven't subscribed yet, take a moment to subscribe. Help me hit 500 subs by August 4th, and we'll do something crazy. Until then, I am your grumpy guide to all things gaming. Have a great weekend, and I need a sponsor, and I will sell out. I'll even take my top off if that's what you want to see.